Hi. I forgot to hit the record button for the third session of the Siddur History, Beliefs, and Philosophies class. So I'm going to attempt to do a brief summary of everything that we covered in the class. The theme of of this particular class was on Birchot HaShachar, the morning blessings. In previous weeks, we talked about some passages in the Talmud which express the idea stated by Rabbi Meir that a person should recite 100 blessings every single day. And we also looked at how the Talmud describes the kinds of prayers and blessings that a person maybe ought to or can recite over the course of the day. It began with nighttime blessings as a person's going to sleep, and then wake up blessings, and then the what are referred to as the Birchot HaShachar, the morning blessings, which, typical morning service today constitute the first words that are recited during public prayer. Although, as the Talmud describes it, these are each brachot that are recited by an individual as that person is going through their morning routines. Things like sitting up in bed, opening their eyes, hearing the rooster, their alarm clock calling the rising of the sun, putting on one's belt, putting shoes on, standing up on the ground, things like that. And as the Talmud describes it, each of those moments of preparation is marked by the recitation of a bracha, as the really invoking God as the creator of the universe, and giving thanks for each individual aspect of our day. It's really a very powerful way of being present, in from the first moment of being awake until the final moment of going to sleep every single day. Okay, so now what we're going to be doing is looking at kind of advancing ourselves 800 years into the future or so, to the very first Siddur that was ever written. It was written by a guy named Rav Amram Gaon. The term Gaon means genius, and it was the title given to the religious leader in Babylonia, which at the time, the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th centuries, was the most kind of important center of Jewish learning and Jewish life, and being kind of near the capital of the Islamic Caliphate, it also gave them a lot of political power and authority. And so one of the things that they would have to do is deal with all sorts of halachic questions about Jewish life and practice, that were sent to them from all other parts of the Jewish world. And so that, as we're going to see, is what prompts Rav Amram Gaon to write down what daily prayer needs to be. The word seder, or the word sidur, same word that we use to describe the meal, kind of the ritual meal that we eat on Passover. It means order or organization, and which is kind of, we when we talk about the Siddur, the prayer book, we usually don't think about the meaning of that word and what it means to, that we, this collection of prayers we call the arrangement, right, or the organization. Well, at some point, someone had to sit down and arrange all of the prayers and blessings, which were composed and developed from very different sources and places. There was a moment when someone sat down and put them all together into order. And that moment was in the 9th century with Rav Amram Gaon. One other detail I'm going to just mention now, which will come up, is Rav Amram was preceded by Rav Natronai Gaon. He was the religious leader of the Babylonian Jewish community before Rav Amram. And Rav Amram, while he didn't write a Siddur, he did issue a lot of halachic rulings pertaining to services and tefillah. And much of what Rav Natronai issued is then codified and organized in the Siddur that Rav Amram has put together. So what I'm going to now share my screen with you, and we'll Here we go. So this is the introduction of the Siddur. We're going to look at basically the first couple of pages of what Rav Amram has written. So here's how he begins. Amram ben Rav Sheshna, that's his name, head of the yeshiva in Mata Machsia, which is a suburb of Sura, responding to Rav Yitzchak, son of the teacher, and Rabbi Shimon, who is held son of the teacher and Rabbi Shimon, who is held dear, adored, and honored in our eyes and in the opinion of the entire yeshiva. All right, so what is he saying? Rav Amram is writing this essentially as a letter or a correspondence to somebody named Rav Yitzchak. Right, Yitzchak, the son of Rabbi Shimon, and Shimon apparently was an esteemed person and was held in high esteem by the entire yeshiva, the entire academy, which seems to be the location where Rav Amram is writing this. So let's see what else we can find. All right, greetings of peace. May heaven show compassion to you, your children, and all the scholars, their students, and our Israelite brethren who live there. Send greetings of peace from us and from Rav Tzemach, head of the Israelite court, from the officers, the scholars of the yeshiva, and the students of our yeshiva, and of the city of Machsia. We, the teachers, the students, and the Jewish citizens of this area are at peace. All right, this very flowery introduction, we're not done with it yet. This is very typical of correspondence really throughout rabbinic Jewish history. Even to this day, often you'll have correspondence, at least in some very some more orthodox circles, will kind of reflect this style. But what do we learn from this? We learn that there is a Beit Din, a Jewish court headed by Rav Tzemach. We know that there's a yeshiva already, which has all of its officials and teachers, and that the person he's writing to seems to not be located in the city of Machsia. So we'll find out shortly where he is. But we want to make sure that we're doing well. We hope you're doing well as well. We are constantly concerned about your welfare and think of you favorably at all times. We pray for you and ask that the Blessed Holy One show compassion to you, that the Blessed Holy One bestow abundant mercy upon you, protect you, save you from troubles and difficulties, from sickness and affliction, from oppressive governments, from destructive actions, and from all the troubles that can occur in life. May God demonstrate compassion in granting you all that you ask for yourselves. Wow, what a bracha, what a blessing. All right, so who is this guy? Like, who would who would be worthy of receiving such incredible blessing before he even gets into the substance of the letter? Let's see. Let's see what might motivate him to be so effusive in his language. Rabbi Yaakov ben Rav Yitzchak delivered 20 gold coins that were sent for the benefit of the yeshiva, 5 for the leadership of the yeshiva, and 15 for the yeshiva itself. We've commanded that you be blessed with brachot and that they come to fruition for you and for your descendants. This explains the language. He's a donor, right? So he sends a letter in the hands of Rav Yitzchak, who presumably is in the hands of Rabbi Yaakov, who presumably is the son of the person who has sent the inquiry. Anyways, he sends 20 gold coins, and Rav Amram wants him to be sure that they're spending the money appropriately and well. 5 gold coins is going to the leadership of the yeshiva. The other 15 is going to support the yeshiva itself. I imagine it's helping the students, providing them with dinner, lodgings, and all of these things, right? And so we call down blessings for you. Thank you very much for your generous donation. The order of prayers and brachot for the entire year, right? Let's look at the Hebrew. Seder tfilot ubrachot shel kol hashana. Seder, there's our word, right? The order or the arrangement of tfilot and brachot, right? So tfilot, that doesn't usually mean just prayer in the generic sense, but when it appears in rabbinic writing, it refers specifically to the Amidah, to the standing prayer, which is one of the anchors of Jewish worship, of the Jewish worship service. So the order or the arrangement of the tfilot and the brachot, the blessings, shel kol hashana, of the entire year. That you requested, that has been shown to us by heaven, we deem appropriate to set forth and lay out in the manner in which the tradition was passed down to us, as compiled by the rabbis during the period of the Mishnah and of the Gemara. All right, now we're starting to get into the substance of this letter. He has been asked, Rav Amram has been asked to lay out the order of prayers and brachot for the year, right? So presumably the recipient of this letter does not know what they're supposed to be praying, right? They don't know exactly what the proper way to daven is. And so they have sent a letter along with 20 gold coins to the center of Jewish learning, led by Rav Amram Gaon, asking for him to lay it all out for them. So what does Rav Amram do? So first of all, notice where he's going to claim authority for what he's about to write. So first authority, heaven, right? What I'm about to tell you, this has got, it's got the geshpunka from God, right? This is the absolute, this is divinely approved, right? And I'm not making any of this stuff up. It was compiled by the rabbis of the Mishnah and the Gemara, right? Here's the formula: Mishnah plus Gemara equals Talmud, right? So what he is about to present is all material that, in Rav Amram's day is, let's say 500 to 800 years old. All he is doing is he is compiling, or he's arranging it in a way that is going to be clear and that the recipients will be able to put into practice. Right now, it's very important for Rav Amram to present himself not as an innovator, as creating something new, but as preserving tradition of something that that he's just bringing down from the past. And so we learned. Rabbi Meir said, a person is obligated to recite 100 brachot each day. We saw this in one of our earlier sessions. This is a Braita. So second, Rabbi Meir lived in his land of Israel in the 2nd century. This is a Braita that appears in the Babylonian Talmud, right? So just keep in mind that this Braita had to travel from the land of Israel to Babylonia, and a lot of time passed as well. Let's continue. In the Jerusalem Talmud, we learned it. It was taught in the name of Rabbi Meir. There is no Jew who does not fulfill 100 mitzvot each day. So this is a little different, right? So this is in the Talmud of the land of Israel. It seems to be the same teaching of Rabbi Meir, only the formulation is a bit different, right? So whereas the first one, the Babylonian Talmud version says there's an obligation to do something, this one says is more just an observation, or maybe it's aspirational, right? That everybody should do 100, not brachot a day, but 100 mitzvot a day. So, and then we go on to our proof text, as it says, now Israel, what does the Lord your God ask of you? Right? Ma, what? Don't read ma, but rather me'ah. If we add an aleph in there, then we get the word me'ah, which means 100. So instead of saying, now Israel, what does the Lord your God ask of you? It's, now Israel, 100 the Lord asks of you, right? 100 what? Well, 100 mitzvot, brachot. Take your pick. I suspect, though, that the original statement of Rabbi Meir is probably closer to what appears in the Jerusalem Talmud, and somehow it gets changed by the time it gets to Babylonia, and we end up with a different version. And that different version becomes very significant because it is going to serve as the really the impetus for creating worship service that has a lot of brachot, right? We need to get to 100 brachot every day. We're going to get most of our brachot in over the course of the kind of the established prayer services. But we're not done laying down our authority, right? King David established the practice of reciting 100 brachot each day, right? This doesn't just go back to the Mishnah, the Gemara. This goes all the way back to King David, right? Almost 2,000 years earlier than Rav Amram Gaon is sitting down to write this, right? All right. It wasn't Rabbi Meir who came up with the 100 brachot a day. King David himself, when the residents of Jerusalem informed him that 100 Israelites were dying every day, he established this requirement. It appears, says Rav Amram, that the practice was forgotten and the sages at the time of the Mishnah and at the time of the Gemara came and organized them. All right, so now this is an interesting story, right? We have the obligation of reciting 100 brachot. That tradition begins in the days of King David, but then, and why? Interesting, apropos of our own time, there's a plague going on. 100 people a day are dying from the plague, and 100 brachot a day, if people start doing that, the plague ends. If only it were so easy. But the tradition is lost and only rediscovered by the sages of the Mishnah and the Gemara. And then they end up in the Talmud. They lay out the basis of Jewish prayer and give us all the brachot. But again, it's not their authority. It's King David's authority, right? King David, who is the ancestor of the Messiah. All right. So now that Rav Amram has established the pedigree, or he's the authority for what he's about to teach us, now he's going to go into the details, or begin the details. The order of the 100 brachot was set forth by Rav Natronai ben Rav Hilai, head of the yeshiva at Mata Machsia, right? So this is his predecessor as Gaon, in correspondence with the community in Lucena, right? Lucerne, southern Spain, through Rav Yosef the elder. Rav Natronai provided as follows: it is no longer possible to recite each bracha, each blessing at its correct time, because today we awake each day with unclean hands. Hands that inadvertently came in contact with unclean parts of our bodies during the night. Instead, when a person wakes, he should first wash his face, hands, and feet as is appropriate. That is how one fulfills the directive in the following verse: prepare Israel for meeting with your God. Every person is obligated to do so. Now, if you recall in the Talmud, it listed a series of blessings that a person's supposed to recite in the morning as they are getting ready, as all the basic things. I mentioned a few of them earlier. Included in that list is the prayer over washing one's hands, al natilat yadayim. Now, interestingly, that prayer comes pretty late in the list, after we've done all the getting out of bed and putting clothes on and all of those things. After we've put on our tefillin, then we find al natilat yadayim, washing the hands. So what is Rav Amram worried about? He's worried about people saying brachot in a state of impurity, right? Our hands wander in the night. Who knows where they're wandering to, but they've wandered, and therefore it's not appropriate for a person to be reciting brachot, to be invoking God's name in such a state. And so it's important for a person to first wash their hands, and then they can go into prayer. So that's pretty interesting, that after establishing his credibility to do everything that he's going to do, what is the very first thing that he does? Is he changes what the Talmud has told us we have to do. That's interesting. But that's not his only reason for doing so. The following represents the custom of all Israelites in Sfarad, which is Hispania, in other words, Spain. In synagogue, the prayer leader recites the morning blessings on behalf of those who do not know how, so that they may fulfill their obligation by answering Amen to the brachot that the prayer leader recites, as Rav Natronai ben Rav Hilai provided. All right, now it's not just the issue of impurity that he's concerned with. He's also concerned that people don't know the brachot, right? Maybe they haven't had a chance to memorize them. They're not literate. That's certainly a likely case. They also might not know when exactly they are supposed to be reciting it. And, maybe they don't have the same kind of attention to detail to get everything done in exactly the right way. So what has happened? Rav Natronai, and then carried on by Rav Amram, has brought the recitation of all these wake-up prayers, has brought them into the synagogue. And so now we've separated the recitation of these blessings from the actions or events that was supposed to be the impetus for reciting them in the first place. So instead of hearing the sound of the rooster and then praising God for giving wisdom and knowledge to the rooster to distinguish between day and night, I wait. I don't do it when I hear the sound of the rooster. We wait till I get to synagogue. I hear the chazan, the leader in services, recite the bracha, and then I say amen to it. Well, that's kind of an interesting change, because we have taken something which is a more spontaneous expression in the moment. Something happens, I say a bracha to acknowledge that moment. And now what I've done is I've turned it into liturgy, right? I brought it into the synagogue. I've put it into a defined order. And instead of me expressing my praise of God in for something that happened to me, it becomes more general, right? It's almost like, well, this is something that happens to all of us on a regular basis, and so we're going to acknowledge God as the beneficent source of all of these wonderful blessings, but not in the moment when they occur. And that's a pretty significant change. And it reflects the constant tension that exists in Jewish prayer between what we call keva and kavanah. Keva means the fixed prayer recited in particular ways at particular times. We would call that liturgy. Versus kavanah, which is intention. That's feeling it, right? Being in the moment, the more spontaneous, extemporaneous type of prayer. And Jewish worship has both aspects of it. And we see that tension going on right here in Rav Amram. So I want to come back for just a moment to the issue about washing first. Rav Amram, remember, he's living in Babylonia, and he is surrounded in a way, not, unlike the rabbis of the Talmud, he's surrounded by Islamic culture. And you're probably familiar with Islamic practice of washing hands and feet before going into prayer 5 times a day. And I think it's a safe assumption to say that concern with purity and kind of suspicion of what the hands might have been doing has found its way into Jewish practice as well, by saying that we don't want people invoking God's name with unclean hands. All right, so then what does he do next? Blessed are you who is sanctified with his commandments and commanded us concerning washing the hands, al natilat yadayim. So this is the very first bracha, the very first prayer that appears in the Seder of Rav Amram Gaon, right? So true to his word, the first blessing is al natilat yadayim. Interestingly, it's being recited not at home when the person is washing their hands. It's being recited by the chazan in synagogue, so that everybody else who either forgot or didn't know how to say the blessing is able now to say amen and then get credit. It's as if they have said the blessing. So if you look in really any Siddur, you're going to find that we follow Rav Amram Gaon. The very first prayer, let's say, that you'll see in a Siddur is Modeh Ani. I give thanks to you, God, for returning my soul into my body. We don't mention God's name in that prayer. The very next line is the bracha for washing the hands, al natilat yadayim. There's a few more prayers in between, and then we get to what we call Birchot HaShachar, the morning blessings, starting with a prayer invoking God for giving wisdom to the rooster to distinguish between day and night, and then we go through all of them in order, right? Day and night, clothing, eyesight, belts, all of the standing up, walking on the ground, putting shoes on, all of these things in order, separated from the moment when I actually did all of these actions. But that is, you can see the influence of Rav Amram Gaon in his Siddur, right? He was writing to the community in Spain. At that point, there was a significant community, but they didn't know what to do, right? They're very far from Babylonia, and they've asked Rav Amram to basically tell them how to pray, how to conduct their public worship. And this is how he has done it. And you can see we've just kind of completed the introduction to that. Not everybody was happy with Rav Amram Gaon, all right? Maimonides. Now, interestingly, Rambam, Maimonides, he is a Spanish Jew, right? He is 12th century, born in Spain, Sephardic. At this point, he has inherited this tradition of Rav Amram for the last couple of centuries. He leaves as a say old teenager or young man with his family fleeing religious persecution. They end up in Morocco for a while, and they go across the Mediterranean, hoping to settle in the land of Israel. He gets there, he's disappointed with the quality of the Jewish community there. They're not particularly learned. They're practices, their halachot and their customs are all wrong, and so he realizes he can't stay, and so he continues south and ends up in Fustat, which is outside of Cairo, where there is a major Jewish community. And Maimonides very quickly becomes the religious leader. He's a political leader of the community. He's the physician to the Sultan's court in Cairo. Very important leader, not just for the Jews of Egypt, but for Jews all over the world. People are writing to him from everywhere, asking for his advice, for his legal rulings. One of his major compositions is called Mishnah Torah, which is his law code. It's more than just a law code. It certainly has laws, but it also has history and philosophy and theology. And he is not shy about saying what he thinks. The Mishnah Torah is divided into 14 books. 14 in Hebrew is Yud Dalet, right? 10 and 4. Yud is 10, Dalet is 4, 14. Spelling Yad, and so the nickname for the Mishnah Torah is the Yad HaShachar, the mighty hand, right? Which of course God brings Israel out of Egypt with the mighty hand. So Maimonides' work gets that nickname. If you ever wanted to know who wrote the Book of Love, this is the answer. Maimonides wrote the Book of Love, right? So one of his 14 books of the Mishnah Torah is called Sefer Ahava, the Book of Love, and this is the book where he describes all of the rules pertaining to prayer and worship. So this particular section in this book is on Tefillah u'Birkat Kohanim, so prayer and the priestly blessing. And in the section that we're going to look at right now, he deals with the exact issue that we just saw in Rav Amram. These 18 blessings, if you count them up, there's 18 blessings in the morning Birchot HaShachar, have no appointed order, right? That thing about having a seder, an order, he's undoing it in the very first sentence, right? Each blessing is recited at the appropriate time and occasion. For example, if one has put on his belt while still on his bed, he recites the blessing, who girds Israel with might. Ozer Yisrael b'gvura, right? When he hears the rooster crow, he recites the blessing, who has given the rooster intelligence, and so on. Any of the above blessings for which there is no occasion is not recited. All right, this is the exact opposite of what Rav Amram has told the community in Spain to do, and which we all do, right? So Maimonides does not like this practice. He goes on. For example, if one passed the night without removing his clothes, on arising in the morning, he does not recite the blessing, who clothes the naked. If one walks barefoot, he does not recite the blessing, who has supplied my every want. On the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av, when there's no washing, one does not recite the blessing concerning the washing of hands, al netilat yadayim, nor the blessing who removes the bands of sleep from my eyes. If one has no occasion to visit the toilet, he does not recite the blessing, Asher Yatzar, who forms man, and so on. And so with the other blessings, all right? Maimonides, he wants to be true to what it says in the Talmud, where it connects the blessing with particular actions that a person is performing. It's a way of invoking God and giving thanks to God for enabling us to do each of these specific things, right? So Maimonides wants to essentially take these blessings out of the liturgy and place them into the more kind of extemporaneous kind of kavanah type of experience. The people in most of our cities have the custom of reciting these blessings in the synagogue consecutively, whether they were under an obligation to do so or not, right? In other words, they are following what Rav Amram wrote. This, however, is an erroneous practice which should not be followed. No blessing should be recited unless there is an obligation to do so. There's a rule, like rabbinic principle, that you don't say a bracha levatala, a blessing for when there is no need for it. To invoke God's name when there's not a need to invoke God's name is considered to be a bracha levatala, and it's a violation of Jewish law. And not only that, if there is doubt as to whether or not I should say a bracha or not, I'm supposed to err on the side of not saying it. So Maimonides is really concerned with that. He's saying that by reciting the entire liturgy of morning blessings in the order in which they appear, separated from the actions which they're supposed to accompany, every one of those is a bracha levatala, and people should not be doing it. All right. Well, this is a really interesting controversy, really, and it's over the nature of it gets to the fundamental nature of liturgy, right? So Maimonides wants to keep things a little bit more free flowing. Now the problem is that Maimonides' method requires a much higher degree of education. And remember, nobody has a written Siddur in these days. So if you're going to say these things, you've got to have them memorized, right? So Maimonides has placed a pretty high bar, but he also, I think, has something important to tell us, that we've got to be present when we're reciting, or ideally we're present when we're reciting these words of prayer. And he recognizes the risk in Rav Amram's system is that I could just, rattle off the prayers, or just kind of, mindlessly say amen to the bracha, which, by the way, for someone who prays a lot, I have that instinctive response of just saying amen when I hear a bracha. Am I really thinking about the words? Am I thinking about where I am? Am I really being present? Well, frankly, not all the time. And so that's the risk of Maimonides' approach. All right, that was, I guess, a slightly shorter version of what we discussed this week. Next week, we are going to discuss 3 additional brachot, blessings, that worked their way into the morning blessings. They're in the Talmud, but they're not part of the list of the morning wake-up blessings, right? And they're blessings about provocative blessings in the negative, about thanking God for not making me a Gentile, a woman, or a slave. So we're going to explore those in great detail next week. Hope you can join us. And thank you for listening in. I apologize for not being able to record the original version of this lesson, but hopefully we'll all be able to be on this same page when we have a chance to learn together again. Tomorrow night begins the holiday of Shavuot, so I'll say Chag Sameach, and a couple days later, Shabbat Shalom.